There have been a few hiccups thus far in the season of Amphibia, but for the most part it has been quite a solid and effective season. Not great, not compared to season 2B, but still quite effective, quite efficient, quite well constructed. There have been a few episodes I would consider somewhat disappointing, but there have also been genuinely moving and poignant moments. I love the subtle but insistent nods to the despair and anguish caused by Anne's disappearance. That created a void that lasted for months and months. There's so much evidence of her parents trying to hope that she's still there, somewhere to be found, and then that hope steadily growing a little less fervent as the months go by, but they never give up on finding their daughter, and then she finally comes back and it's a happy ending, but there's still a lot of evidence of all that despondency, and I like that. This is not the kind of show that will ruminate on that despair, but it should be mentioned every now and then, and it is, and the show's better for it. Contrasting this, we've gotten very little evidence that Anne or anyone in this world is actively thinking about the disappearances of Sasha and Marcy. Anne mentions both of them quickly back in the new normal, and then she has not mentioned them a single time since then, except for that one time in the Thai temple episode wherein Anne pulls out Marcy's journal and references it as Marcy's journal, but she doesn't have any emotional reaction to saying Marcy's name or thinking about Marcy. It's as though nothing bad had ever happened to Marcy. There's no time in which Anne stops to ruminate on what has become of her friends and the close bonds between them that drove the majority of the drama in the last half of season 2. This is odd, and it has to be intentional, but for the life of me, I couldn't say why. Obviously, I don't think Anne is just a cold and heartless person who doesn't care about her friends, although it is true, as I've said in other videos, that I don't think she values those friendships quite as much as Marcy and Sasha do. Anne has a lot of other connections. She's very great at forming connections with people. The other two, not so much. Anne represses emotions she doesn't want to think about. She ignores memories that would prevent her from going about her everyday life with a measure of composure and ease. All three of these girls have a bad tendency to sweep pressing issues and conflicts about themselves or about their relationships with each other under the rug until it's too late. But for Anne, that tendency is obscured somewhat because she is our main character. She's the one whose perspective we're most closely aligned with. If Sasha or Marcy become more myopic, that immediately registers because we know Anne's perspective. But if Anne is more myopic and more unwilling to deal with the actual reality of what has happened and the situations in which she finds herself outside of these hermetically sealed little placid bubbles of perfection she constructs for herself, it's less obvious that she is in the wrong, though she is. We see her refuse to admit to her parents anything about the robots until it's too late, and that robot is already about to kill them. As importantly, we never see her properly deal with the fallout from reunion. That close bond she had with one of her best friends was split asunder. And even though Anne believes she was in the right, her friend nearly dies and was consumed by self-loathing. That's a hard situation to stop and think about. Requires reaching outside one's own personal perspective, so Anne doesn't. She tries to put that aside. So I don't think it's necessarily unrealistic or not right for the character that Anne is not talking about what happened to her friends or her relationships with those friends, but it's bad for the show. It's kind of shallow artistically. It's not that I don't like a lot of the episodes the show has been doing. They're competent. I'd argue the episode quality here, compared to Season 1 or the first half of Season 2, is significantly better here, which is impressive considering that there does not seem to be as much to do on Earth as there is in Amphibia. But it's missing something. I think a lot of people have sensed that, and that's something I'd argue is a willingness to reckon with the fact that two of the most important characters of the show, characters whose decisions in the second half of Season 2 shaped the circumstances in which all three find themselves in Season 3, those characters are just not mentioned. It's not even that they're shunted off to the side or that more focus is spent on Anne and the planters, which is true, and it's not great narratively, but the fact that it's not even mentioned what happened to Sasha and Marcy just feels kind of myopic and kind of inert. The show doesn't feel as vibrant as it should because it's not willing to deal with the consequences of what happened at the end of Season 2. Sasha and Marcy are critical to the show. They are complex characters filled with yearning and passion and flawed desire and a existential drive to really find themselves and reevaluate their relationships with themselves and with others, and those characters cannot just be ignored in favor of more sweet and tender adventures with Anne and the planters and the Boonchoys. Even though I completely understand why Anne is less willing than she should be to talk about the disappearances of her friends and the state of her friendship with them, that does not mean the show should align its perspective with hers. When I pictured how Season 3 would go, I did not have this idealized vision of it in my head. I just imagined that it would be more willing to incorporate some of the darkness and the real human drama we see at the end of Season 2, even if there were also going to be lighthearted adventures. And I'm still wondering why no one seems to care about Sasha and Marcy. Do Anne's parents not ask about them? Presumably, Sasha and Marcy came over quite often. They were close to the family. At least, that's the impression we seem to get. Anne's parents at least knew who they were and knew that Anne cared about them. If Sasha and Marcy somehow did not exist in this timeline, outside Anne's recollections of them, would the show have played out any differently in Season 3? I don't think so. And that's kind of troubling. So, do Sasha and Marcy's parents not care about them? I assume we are going to see some elements of their parents having to come to grips with what happened to their daughters. Brawley seemed to suggest as much in his comments about the direction Season 3A was going to take, but it's a bit strange that it hasn't happened yet, and it does not seem like there are any episodes explicitly dedicated to that in the future. Though, of course, maybe there are, I don't know. Sasha's parents not caring about their daughter's fate and moving forward without her would be extremely cold, but I can see that, at least. I've said a lot more about Sasha's parents in my video explicitly going over my hypotheses for what they're probably like. So if you want to hear me spend more time talking about Sasha's parents, go watch that video. But in summary, my view of Sasha's parents is that they were probably not there for her. They probably were not significant contributors to her upbringing. Sasha demonstrates characteristics both positive and negative of a kid who's had to take care of herself from an early age, who did not have the support of adults, and certainly did not have the support of warm and loving parents. Marcy's parents, however, do seem to care about her, so it's quite a bit more odd that they do not seem to play a major role in Season 3A. I do not think they moved. That would be heartless. I would be shocked if they are not still passionate about finding her and bringing her back to the family. That doesn't make them great parents. That just means that they care about their daughter, which they seem to some extent. I do believe there is more tension to the relationship with their daughter than has hitherto been seen. I don't think Marcy would have reacted the way she did if there were no problems in that family aside from her parents moving. But I do think Marcy's parents, at least based on what we've seen about them, would still be really interested in looking for them, and it would be better for the show if we do get some outside perspectives that are not necessarily aligned with the perspectives of the little bubble created around Anne and the Planters and Anne's parents. The shadow of Marcy and Sasha's disappearances hang over the show. Considering how absent any mentions of Marcy and Sasha have been this season, I have to believe this absence is something that is going to be addressed later, though I do not know why they have been so reluctant to address it so far. Still, I suppose we will see what happens with Anne and Marcy and Sasha's parents in the future. I do hope we at least get some scenes with these other parents. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. What do you want to see with Marcy and Sasha's parents? What do you think they're like? I'm really fascinated to see what tack the show takes with that. I hope it at least does, at least try and include some scenes with these parents. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.